We're getting close, guys. It is almost time to begin haying out here at Piney Grove, and we have partnered with Tractor Tools Direct, so they have provided us with all the equipment we need to cut, rake, and bale hay out here on the farm. But before we can actually get to doing any of that, we got to put together the equipment that they sent us. So any hay operation needs three things, besides a tractor, of course. And the first thing you need is a mower. So Tractor Tools Direct has provided us with an IBEX drum mower, and we put that together, and we've got a complete video out there on how to put it together. We also have a video on how to shorten your PTO shaft. And then we also did a demonstration of how to use the drum mower, but we haven't used it yet in an actual hay field. But that's coming up. The next thing you'll need is some way to rake the hay. So we have a rake here. And this is the IBEX TX80 rake. And over there, and we haven't gotten to it yet, is the IBEX TX31 mini baler. We have two tractors out here on Piney Grove. We have the Kubota L3901. It's a 39 horsepower tractor with a 32 horsepower PTO. And we also have the Summit TX25, which is a 25 horsepower tractor with 18 PTO horsepower. And that's what we'll be using to cut our hay and process it out here at Piney Grove. Now, one thing I want to say about Tractor Tools Direct is their shipping is really fast and their packaging is beyond expectations. They put them on heavy-duty wooden pallets. They wrap them well so that you can leave them out in weather until you can get to assembly. And everything comes just really neatly packaged. The thing I'm most impressed with is the instructions. I put together the drum mower and I just had no problem putting it together because the instructions are clear, they're in the right order, they have color pictures, and they just guide you along the way, even if you're not familiar with putting together farm equipment. And as I took apart the pallet here for the hay rake, I found the exact same thing. It's easy to dismantle the pallet, everything is secure with a Torx 25 screw and also a 9/16 lag bolt. You take a couple of screws out and unband it and you're ready to put it back together. But I did make one mistake, so if you buy a rake from them, I'm going to show you what you need to do before you start putting it together. So my fatal mistake was not looking at where the 3-point hitch is supposed to be on the pallet, because you got to hook it up to the tractor to put it together. Here's what I did. I put the 3-point hitch on this end, so I got to switch to the forks on the Kubota, turn this pallet around, and then we'll get this thing mounted on the Kubota and finish putting it together. This is everything all laid out. You've got all the parts and pieces you need. You've got all your hardware. They sent us thread lock, and all those bolts and thread lock, I assume, will be used to put on those rake tines. And while I'm talking about packaging, just take a look at, they actually built an angle iron frame all the way around the baler. And I can only guess they did that because the baler is the most expensive part of this package. Another thing I will say is that if they show up at your property with a tractor trailer like they did here at Piney Grove, you're gonna need a little bit more tractor than that to lift it off, the baler part anyway, because this tractor can lift around 1,100 pounds. And that particular package right there was more than that. So make sure that the tractor trailer truck has a lift gate so they can lower it down to the ground at least, and then you could dismantle the pallet and put it together. So with the tractor in position, I should be able to manhandle this rake and put it on this 3-point hitch. It's not really that heavy. And the instructions say to put it on the tractor for assembly. So here it goes. This side I should put on first. If you're not able to kind of maneuver this stuff by hand, I use what's called a digging bar or a pry bar, and I can kind of move just about any weight of equipment with that to get the fine tuning for a 3-point hitch. I'm not going to hook up the PTO right now. That won't be needed for assembly. But the PTO, of course, would hook to the tractor output to the rake input here. I'm just gonna get it all together, and then we'll hook up the PTO and maybe do a demonstration at the end. The instructions actually call for blocking the back up so it doesn't fall through the pallet. Blocking it would make it easier to hook up this side. Hook up my top link, and I should be able to lift this right up. So just like with the drum mower, there's a pin that comes with this IBEX equipment. I guess you could use the typical top link pin here, but if you use theirs, it just goes in a little bit differently. I'm going to lengthen the top link just to get it on here, but I think it needs to actually be shortened for the rake to be level. Not going to adjust the sway bars because we're just doing this for assembly, but all my pins are in for safety. I feel good it's not going to fall off the tractor. Look at this heavy duty pallet. It's heavy. Like, I'm 200 pounds and I'm having trouble moving it. Let's take a moment and appreciate this hardwood pallet. Got 4 4x4s on it, and looks like solid 1.5 inch boards. Marty and Pat out there at Tractor Tools Direct, that's one heck of a pallet. So the rake does come with a PTO shaft, and it actually says which side goes to the tractor and which side goes to the rake. And we're not going to put it on, but this tractor, I've never had to cut a PTO shaft for any implement. But the Summit tractor, which is 1 frame size smaller, I've had to cut every PTO shaft. If you're using a subcompact or a compact tractor as opposed to a large frame compact tractor, you may have to cut your PTO shaft. Tractor Tools Direct has a set of instructions that are separate for the rake assembly that show you how to cut it. And I also have a video that I did where I cut the shaft for the drum mower. So all that information is available for you if you do have to cut the shaft. We're going to put it to the side for now. And one more thing about cutting the shaft, get a Sawzall. You can do it with a manual hacksaw, but a Sawzall, you can literally do it in minutes. I know I've mentioned it several times about the instructions, but it's so important because I got another product and I'm struggling to use that product because the instructions are so bad. They're in black and white and they're not printed real clearly, and I'm trying to follow along, and I feel like I'm a fairly intelligent person, but it's going to take me more time to demonstrate that product because the instructions are bad. And for someone that's used to equipment, I can only imagine how hard it would be for the regular consumer having to use the instruction on that product. This is how good the instructions are. I mean, it shows you how to hook up your 3-point hitch and everything. All right, it says the rear wheels come pre-assembled. So these are the rear wheels and upside down for shipping purposes. So we'll have to remove them and put them right side up. They say shorten the top link to make it tilt more if you need more space under here. And that's what I would have run into if I'd hooked this up to the Summit, because it's a smaller frame tractor and the 3-point hitch doesn't lift as high. So that's why I'm assembling it on the Kubota. But a smaller tractor can definitely run this rake. It just might not be able to assemble it on a smaller tractor. You might have to use a chain hoist or something to lift it. Well, let's get that done. Let's get these flipped and put this thing together. So in order to get those wheels off, you got to loosen up this Allen screw right here. And it's opposite of the grease fitting, so it's kind of hidden. It's like a 5mm if this case is correct. So 5mm to take this out. And what I'm reading is that once this screw is out, this cap comes off completely, then you thread this wheel through from the bottom, and then this cap goes back on top. So that comes out, slide it up from the bottom, I guess spin this around so the cap can go back up on top. Put the Allen screw back in. Now they say to put Loctite on it, and I will, but for right now I'm just gonna temp install it. Okay, so this is the adjustment for the wheel up and down. That makes sense. That was pretty simple. We'll do the same thing on this side. Pull this out the top, slip it in from the bottom, flip this over. Yeah, you get a better view of how this fits together from this angle. Slide that all the way up in there, tighten down the screw. And again, adjustable down and up. Easy breezy. Just like the rear wheels, this support stand comes in the upside down position. So it's got a quick pin on the bottom. Pull out that pin, take this wheel up, and then turn it around, thread it back in. This looks like it has 2 positions, 2 holes, a hole for when you're unhooking it, and then a hole for when you're using it. I just check with the instructions because you could either put that wheel, turn that so that wheel is in or out, and it looks like the instructions show the wheel towards the tractor. So when you're putting that in from the bottom, make sure that wheel is that way towards the tractor. Next thing we're going to do is put on these sideboard panels. They go in this manner, and then they give you 16 bolts. There's 4 per side panel, and they're in the center compartment of their hardware kit, and they got lock nuts on them. There's 2 on the top and 2 on the bottom. So the side panels go with the logo to the outside, and 4 bolts with the bolt head on this side and the nut on the inside. And also the instructions say to put Loctite on every one of these bolts. I'm going to assume that this rides against this little vertical upright and not over top of it. So 4 bolts there, and then 4 bolts on the other one, and then the same thing on the bottom. And that's that vertical right there I was talking about. The bolt really won't allow it to stay down below that. So that may just be the way this one was built. I don't think it matters. Once you get Loctite on all the bolts, then it's a 13 millimeter to tighten everything up. I'm not going to use an impact just because I don't want to over tighten it, at least not on the first one. I think I'm going to change my mind on the impact, just be quicker. Just don't want to strip out the bolts. I'll switch over to a ratchet and a wrench to do the final tightening, but with the impact I can draw them up real quick. Discovered something that's not in the instructions. You see where this box is formed here? There's another box on the bottom, and that just gives rigidity to this panel. Well, one of these boxes has a longer end, and on this one back here, it's easy to get straight because it has stickers on it, and you put it so the stickers can be read. On this one, there's no stickers, and this thing can go either way. Well, I put it on upside down, and it wasn't fitting properly, and it wasn't making sense to me until I realized that this lower lip right here is longer. It needs to be on the top so that it can go over top of these supports. That's not in the instructions, so that's one thing that Tractor Tools Direct should add to the instructions, is that there's a top and a bottom to these. And I guess when you put the bottom ones on, that part will go down as opposed to up here on the top. I'll fix that real quick and put on the other 2 panels, and we'll get on to the next step. The next step is to install all the tines, and you get a box of tines, and they go in these slots right here. You push them in that slot, and then you have the 3rd compartment of your bolts. And these bolts actually have the little square base, and these are called carriage bolts. And that carriage bolt part will slip over top of the tine. And then they have non-self-locking nuts, and I'll get you the size of this in a second. Then you put this non-self-locking nut over the bolt, and because it's non-self-locking, you have to put Loctite on every one of these nuts. So this one is 17 millimeter, so we'll be using the impact and a 17 millimeter socket. We'll go ahead and show you how to do this first row, and then we're just going to stand here and spin the rake and put in all the rest of the rows. You can see the rake, I can just spin it by hand. Get all these mounted. Then there's one more step, and that is there is a hay stop that you put at the other end. There's a bracket and a hay stop. So we'll put that on and throw the PTO shaft on and go spin this thing. Let me get some Loctite on here, get these tight, and we'll have the first set on. What's nice about these is they're carriage bolts, so they'll hold themselves. Snug them up, make sure they're straight. First row on, rinse, lather, repeat, and then we'll have this thing put together. We're on the last set of tines here, and I have some pointers for you. And although it's a little bit repetitive, it actually was kind of a fun process. But after I got that first row on, I wasn't sure if I'd put them on correctly, and I'll show you. You can put them on this way, and they actually kind of hang out there by themselves. But if you're not careful, or you're not thinking about it, you could also put them on this way. And I looked at the instructions, and this is the tractor, and that's the back end. So from this angle, you're going to point that to the left side of the tractor. So you would want the round, springy part pointing towards the left side of the tractor, or the smooth part towards the right side of the tractor. The carriage bolts go in here, and their square shoulders hold it in place, so you don't need a wrench on the bolt head side. After I got them like that with the 3 bolts on them, then I would put the nut on them just to hold them in place so they didn't fall. But I left enough threads so that I could use the Loctite and get a little bit of that blue thread lock number 42 on there. So I did that for everyone, and again, these are not lock nuts. These are just regular, what I call jam nuts or non-locking nuts. These will be under a lot of stress and vibration. Without this Loctite, if you don't do that, I think you would lose some of these tines when you're raking. But I've done everything per the instructions, so I shouldn't lose any tines, but that don't mean I won't. Just have to stay tuned to when we cut and bale hay here. I have no doubt the equipment will hold together, but I'm a human just like you, so I could have missed tightening one. And then after I hit it with the impact, I just come back with a 17 millimeter end wrench or combination wrench. Just make sure they're tight and snug, and that's it. I'm looking for grease fittings. I know there's 2 back there, or 4 back there on the rear casters, but I don't see any other ones. So everything else must be sealed bearings. We got the end gate to put on, and then this thing's put together. So let's put that on real quick. These are the grease fittings I see, and if you remember from the beginning of the video, I put in these Allen keys, and I've taken them out since, and I put Loctite on them. But you want to make sure you don't lock them too much, and the Allen key is right there. Because if you lock them too tight, this won't be able to spin. And I actually had the other side locked down and it wouldn't spin. But you want these to spin freely because this will be on the ground. So that grease on top of this cap right here will keep that end greased. And this grease fitting will allow it to go up and down easily. And that's it that I see for grease fittings. I don't see any on the casters themselves. And on my finish mowers, I have grease fittings on the casters, but I guess they're sealed bearings, because they roll real easily and they don't have grease fittings on them. Last thing we have to install is this end rake. It'll slide in that little pocket there where this jam nut is, or this jam bolt, I guess. I guess it's like a big Allen bolt. You can slide the bracket in there and then attach this end gate. And this is the bracket. It'll slide right in here, and you adjust how far out it is with this knob, and that just it just locks against there. There's no holes in here, so it's not graduated, it's continuous all the way. But we'll leave it loose for right now till we put the end gate on. They call it the hay stop guard on the hay guard arm. So we've already got the hay guard arm on. They call that the retaining bolt, and they want thread locker on the bolts that hold on this stop. All right, let's get that on. It looks like there's 1, 2, 3, 4, there's 5 bolts. So these are the longer bolts in the pack, and the pack's now completely empty. Gave me everything I needed. It can only go on one way. And we'll drop them bolts in there, put the nuts on the bottom, put some Loctite on there. This thing will be assembled. These are 13 millimeter, and if you don't have 13 millimeter, 1/2 inch, especially a 6-point 1/2 inch socket, will fit 13 millimeter and fit it perfectly. It's not like it'll strip it or anything. Make sure that Loctite's up closer to where it's going to be tightened. Go ahead old school on these. And that's it. Go down the line, get all 5 tight, and this adjusts in and out depending on how wide you want your finished hay row to be. Let's give her a spin, see what happens. It's all put together and ready to rake, but our pasture's not quite ready to be mowed and turned into hay. But this is what it looks like behind the tractor. We'll have to do some fine-tuning adjustments. You can see where you can adjust the levers here on the tires. And what you want is those tines, as they come across and sweep around, not to actually hit dirt, to stay just above the dirt. Probably need to be up just a hair. As that rake goes around, it'll throw the hay that way. So you have all cut grass all out here. The width of these tines, or the width of this rake, all of that grass will end up over here, and then you adjust that stop out. Like if you want a wider windrow, if you have a big hay baler or a lot of grass, you might want a wider windrow, so you push that out to the left. Or if you have a little bit of grass and you want a tight windrow because the intake of your hay baler is kind of narrow, you would put that closer to the rake. And the PTO spins it. I'm pretty sure it's 540 PTO. Most everything is 540 PTO. Simple 3-point hitch hookup with the PTO shaft. But that's the assembly and first look of the IBEX TX80 powered rake. There are passive rakes that you just drag through your pasture, and gravity and the angle of the rake pushes the grass to the center. But this is actually a powered rake and pushes all that grass to one side. We're excited to use it out here at Piney Grove to rake our hay and bale our hay this summer. We'd like to give a big thank you to Tractor Tools Direct for sponsoring this video. We look forward to seeing you all in the next video. And remember, life's short, tractor hard.